Hey, what's up? Welcome to Same Blood. This is the very first episode of something. I don't really know what yet. Basic idea here is that in a world that is more divided than ever on things that don't really matter, I wanted to and we wanted to have some conversations about the reality that underneath, we all bleed the same blood. We all have hopes, dreams, ideas, goals, desires. We all want to experience love. We all want to experience respect. And we have so much in common that we can have some conversations that I think really matter when you strip away all of the things that people try to use to divide us. Yep. So that's the basic idea for this conversation and for hopefully future conversations. I'm here with Pastor Marc Stern.
Good morning, good afternoon,
good evening, and good night. You see that movie, Truman Show, years ago? Jim Carrey. He was like stuck in that bubble.
Pieces of it.
That was like his thing. Good afternoon, good morning, evening. I don't know, and good night. Anyway, great sign off. So you are the Adults Ministries pastor.
Correct.
At Faith Bible Church.
Faith Bible Church, DeSoto, Texas.
How long have you done that?
Been about 2 years and a couple of months.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. We're going to get into that, kind of that story a little bit later. But one of the things I wanted to start with, silly as it is, I asked you, I said, Mark, what's your favorite candy? Right? And you said?
Reese's Peanut Butter Cups.
But not just any, the miniature ones.
The miniature ones.
Which does matter because I think those are the best.
They are. My mom buys them. They sit on her table.
Yep.
On Sundays when we go over there, I get about 5 or 6 at a time and just devour them.
Oh, man. Have you done them? Have you frozen? Do you eat them frozen ever?
I've never had them frozen.
Oh, just changed your life, man.
Okay.
They're so good.
Frozen. Okay. I'm going to have to try it.
So what I did is I went and bought the party size because if you're going to buy some, you have to get some. So you want to grab a couple?
Thank you, sir.
The idea here is man, I love these things. And I think I love them because my dad loves them.
Okay.
Like, I actually had to hide that bag from my dad.
That's understandable.
I had it over my parents' house and I had to hide it so he didn't find it because there wouldn't be any left for this. But, I mean, these, to me, I think about, like, so many things that people have in common, right? And some people are going to be like, those are gross. I would never eat those.
Right.
And you know what? You're wrong. As a person,
Very wrong.
You need to fix that. But for me, like, they're so good. They're amazing. Where do you think your love for these came from? Is it your mom or is it something else?
Oh, first of all, I started off with just a love of sweets in general.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's something about when you have a small portion of them, it kind of convinces you that it's not as bad. But when you eat 10 or 12 of them, then it kind of defeats the whole purpose. So I think it's because they're small.
Right.
But there's chocolate, peanut butter. I love both of those.
Oh, man, absolutely. And you're so right about the portion thing.
Yeah.
Because when you go to the store and I see those big Reese's peanut butter, and it's like 2 of them or 3 or 4 pack, I'm like, that is too much. Yep. But I'll buy a party pack, and I will handle 10, 12, 15 at a time. And like, wait a minute. I don't feel like I did the right math there.
Yep.
I think I was wrong on my numbers.
In my head, I think, okay, if I put these together, I really only ate 2 or 3.
Right.
But I don't know if that's correct. I don't think it is.
I don't know. All I know is 2 or 3 is never enough. I always want like 17 of them. All right, so along the same lines.
Okay.
Let's talk about some other favorites here. You have a favorite movie?
Favorite movie? I have a couple of them. I'm going to go with Warrior.
Okay.
And Rocky IV.
Rocky IV.
Rocky IV with the Russian Drago.
Oh, man. That was so intense.
That is my movie.
Man, that is a crazy movie.
That is now Cole's favorite movie. So we've passed it from generation to generation. Cole, my son.
That's one of my favorite things about like movies. I mean, you have like just movies that because you can pass them along.
Right.
It's one of those things that it's like, man, this is my favorite movie. I can introduce it to my kids.
Yep.
My wife and I were showing our daughters this old and look, it's a terrible quality movie, just like the production quality. It's terrible. But it's like this old black and white movie that we used to watch, family watched years and years and years ago. Mm-hmm. And it's watching, I'm like, this is awful, but my kids are dying laughing.
Yep.
And I'm like, wait a minute, this is hilarious because it totally, like, we just passed on this funny kind of memory from my past that they get to watch. And it was old when I saw it. Right. And it's from like my parents and like their parents, just like an old silly movie.
Yep.
But it's cool to be able to pass that along. So Rocky 4.
Yep.
Are the rest of the Rocky movies like okay, or you just don't care?
Just Rocky 4.
Just Rocky 4.
I mean, I've watched all of
Right.
them except for like Rocky 5, which is just straight
Right.
trash.
Right.
But I've watched all the others. I'll literally I'll go to YouTube and I'll find like movie clips of my favorite movies and I'll just put them together and I'll just sit and watch them over and over. Like,
Oh, yeah.
because they motivate me. I'm like,
Yep.
yeah, let's go.
Man, isn't it amazing how that works? Like, basically, they create this motivational scene. Like, it's all fake, but you watch it and you're like, I want to run through a wall right
That's
now.
exactly what happens.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's the power of it. Just so you know, we're going to clip this where you just say that Rocky 5 is straight trash. that's all we're posting is you saying
That's totally fine.
Rocky 5. And I'm just gonna tag Stallone in it. Just so you know.
This is true. He knows it.
You know, he does.
I mean, it was
Right.
with he was training this guy
Right,
and
yeah,
they
yeah.
fight in the street. I mean, there wasn't even a real fight.
Tommy Gunn was
Tommy-
that? Yeah.
yeah.
Man, I remember I saw that and I was like,
was
this is the
horrible.
worst, the most let down ending where it's like just a street fight?
I think I left sad. Like,
Yeah.
what did I just watch?
Yeah.
So
I hear that. Okay, cool. Interesting. I like it. Did you ever watch the Rambo movies? I feel like Rambo and Rocky are just like so similar, but also there is a definite violence escalation
Yes.
in Rambo.
I did watch Rambo, or some of those movies, so
Okay.
I
Yeah.
shouldn't have, but I did.
I mean, I did too.
Yeah,
Yeah. Anyway. Okay. So movies. Now, are you a sports guy?
I am.
Favorite sport?
Basketball,
Basketball. Okay.
Basketball.
Favorite team?
Golden State Warriors.
And we're done here. No, I'm
And
just
why?
kidding. I'm just kidding. Because we're in Dallas. The
Yeah, I know,
Mavericks, man.
Don't get me wrong, I like Dallas,
Yeah.
but I mean, favorite team,
Yeah.
Golden State Warriors. Yeah.
But you were probably a fan of them before Steph Curry and they were winning championships all day, or
No, it was because of Steph I became
okay,
a fan.
that makes sense.
I like to watch people who have just kind of mastered their craft,
Yep.
or they're like trailblazers,
Yep.
and so Steph he's one of those kind of people.
Thank you for that. Because for me, as a sports fan, like yes, I like the Mavericks. I want my home teams to do well,
Right.
but I love LeBron James because he's so good at what he does that I'm like, yeah, if he's playing for the Cavs or the Heat, wherever he played, I just want to see greatness.
Yeah.
And it's like I actually really love Steph Curry. The Warriors, they're unbelievable, right? So I get that. But there are certain people who are like, no, if you weren't a fan beforehand, you can't be a fan now. And I'm like, hold on, what if I just watch it and enjoy it and don't tell you?
Right,
Is
right.
that okay?
No, it's
Yeah.
like it's all about seeing greatness and recognizing it. Recognizing it. I mean, that's my thing. Same thing with the movies. It's like I see a great scene, I just want to watch that scene over and over and over again. Same thing with players.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. I like it. Do you have a secondary sport that you watch, or is it mostly just basketball?
I watch football.
Okay,
I'm a Cowboys fan.
right. Is that Cowboys fan because you have to be, or because like you really?
No, I'm not like one of I had a cousin in high school. When the Cowboys would lose, he literally would not come to school. He would be sick. I mean, without fail. So I'm not that kind of Cowboys
Right.
fan. I don't get my hopes up.
Right.
But I mean, I enjoy watching.
You're a
them play.
realistic Cowboys fan.
I'm realistic.
Yeah, if you get
yeah.
devastated every time they let you down, well, we wouldn't be here.
It only takes a couple times. I'm like,
Tragedy.
okay, I'm out.
That's awesome. All right, cool. So, and then the last, as far as this favorites idea, besides the Reese's peanut butter cups, favorite food. Like if you're gonna sit down for a meal and you're like, man, and you're not worried about how it's affecting the waistline, because that does matter.
That matters.
It's like, man, if I'm not worried about it, that food's gonna change a little bit.
So shameless plug. Cheddar's has the best desserts.
Okay.
They have a dessert called the Cookie Monster, which is this big chocolate chip cookie,
Yep.
ice cream fudge, whipped
Oh,
cream, a cherry on top, and then they have a chocolate chip. A chocolate cake, and it's not just like a little piece. It's
Right.
it's large.
Right.
And you have a scoop of ice cream on top. So those are my favorite desserts there.
That's what I'm talking about. Man, okay. This is weird. And this is I found that this is controversial. I don't like whipped cream.
I mean, whipped cream. It's not a deal breaker for
Right.
me, but
Some people are like, man, they get pretty intense about it. My wife loves whipped cream. Like just eat just that. And I'm like, it's like right in the middle of being good and not. It's like it's not ice cream.
right.
Right. And so it's like, well, I just would want the ice cream because it's not as good as ice cream.
Right,
So just
right.
give me the ice cream. But no, I will never turn down a good chocolate cake,
Okay.
a cookie with ice, like just classic desserts, man. I'm in all day.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
awesome. Okay. So now let's have the conversation, right?
Okay.
The really intense conversation. Where did you grow up?
Where did I grow up? So I've been in Dallas my whole life.
Okay.
When I was in junior high, we moved to Duncanville. So I lived there for a while. Then we moved to DeSoto when I was in high school. So I've been in Dallas my whole life. I went to Tuskegee in Alabama when I was in college for a semester.
Right.
And I remember them. They kept calling me Mark from Texas because they said I had this Texas accent, which I still don't. I'm not aware of it. So, but other than that, I've been in Dallas.
Nice. Yeah, I grew up here. We moved here when I was 5, I think, from Washington State.
Washington State.
So we spent most of my life here. Okay. Have you traveled much around like the United States? Have you traveled much outside of Texas?
Not really. I've been to California, Florida.
Right.
Usually it's just for vacation.
Right.
But I haven't done a lot of traveling within the States.
It's interesting. The reason I ask is I've traveled around a bit, and you get people who will talk about like, man, it's so different in Texas versus California, and like you walk around, it just seems so different. And I think that's an interesting perspective, but it's also like people who grow up somewhere specifically, and like that's just where they've always been. You know, it's kind of it's almost like a foreign concept where it's like why would I know what it's like in Boston? I've never been to Boston. Right. You know, but that's kind of one of these comparison things people like to do where it's like, man, Texas is this, but California is this or that. And I'm like, well, yeah, but if I just live in Texas, I don't really care what's going on in California.
Well, my daughter, she went to school in California, and she wants to live there. She's actually there now for the summer, looking for a job to stay. Yep. So it's like she loves California.
Give her time. Yeah. I'm just kidding. I lived there for 3 years, so.
If she can find a job to survive in California, it's all hers.
And that is the hardest part right there.
Yeah.
Is the job in California. So you grew up here. What did you want to be when you were a kid? Did you have did you have an idea or not really?
I wanted to play basketball.
Right.
Like that was my heart, my passion. I was just 6'1", but you couldn't tell me anything. Like I was basketball all day. And in my senior year, I tore some ligaments in my ankle. So that kind of shut down basketball. Not that I was going to be some great player, but in my mind, it shut down basketball for me. After that, I just kind of wandered. I went to school to be an engineer. That was a complete waste of time. Okay. I was miserable in college.
Yep.
Didn't know what I wanted to do. And then when I was in college, I kind of recommitted my life to the Lord. And all of a sudden, I wanted to be – this whole ministry thing kind of just like started. And so it was just the craziest thing. I don't know why I wanted to be a minister. I mean, my dad wasn't he taught Sunday school, things like that, but he wasn't like a preacher, you know?
Right.
So I don't know. I don't even know. Besides it being God, I don't know how this all started. But it was in college where I knew I wanted to stand in front of people and teach or preach the gospel. And so that's kind of where it all happened.
You know, a lot of people are terrified in front of people. Have you been comfortable in front of people like your whole life?
No, not at all. I hate being in front of people.
Okay.
Every single time I stand in front of people, I tell myself, why are you doing this? Like, why? I remember I had a buddy, I did his wedding. I had never done a wedding before. And I remember the night before, I remember texting my wife, Misty, and I was like, why do I do this to myself? Like, I don't enjoy this. Like, why? And so, no, I hate it every single time, but.
You had something you wanted to say that you needed to be said. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, because I've got a history of performance, right, in front of people playing music and talking, and so many people who do that, so many musicians and other people like that are terrified in front of people.
Right.
And it's really interesting because it's like, wait, why are we doing this? I used to be terrified. I would start shaking when I got in front of people when I would talk.
Really?
Oh man, I was like, if you put me in front of a room, I would start crying.
Really?
I was so scared. So
how'd you work through it?
You know, it's really interesting. I say it's really interesting. It's interesting for me, kind of the mental gymnastics, but it really kind of boiled down to this, is that when I get in front of people, I realize that if somebody wants to judge me for something and they want to find a problem with what I do, they will always be able to do that.
Okay.
So it's not about those people. Because if they're looking for what I did wrong, you'll always find it. Doesn't matter. You can see the best speech in the world and be like, yeah, but he messed up there.
Yeah.
So instead, I chose to focus on the idea that when you get up in front of people, the majority of people don't want you to mess up. They're not rooting for you to fail.
Right.
They just want to be able to enjoy what you're doing, whether it's music or talking. They're not like, wanting you to fail. They're wanting you to succeed because they want to experience whatever it is that you're there to do.
Right.
And so when I just sort of wrapped my mind around that, and even if I had no idea, maybe the audience was going to be hostile or whatever, but in my mind I was just, you know what? I just thought, like, I want to do well, and the people want me to do well, and so those are the people who I'm worried about.
That's good.
And if you want me to do bad, well, then this wasn't for you anyway,
right.
Because you're going to find a problem with it. So I think it was partially that, and then also partially kind of finding like my identity, where it's like your opinion of whatever I do can't shake that.
Yep.
And I think that was probably it. But I mean, it took a long time, even singing. Like my throat would close up, and I'm like, I'm signing up for this. Why do I do that? I can't even I can't even sing these songs. So, yeah, it's definitely weird.
Yep.
But so, did you go straight into ministry right out of college?
I see. I went to school for electrical engineering. Did that for about 4 or 5 years. Then I started working for the phone company.
Okay.
I was making good money, so I was like, at that point, I'm like, okay, family,
right,
good job, I'm good to go. I would do ministry on the side whenever I had opportunities, and then at some point, it wasn't enough.
Right.
Like I wanted to commit more of my time to doing this, and so I just prayed about it for years. There was no way I couldn't open the door because like now I have bills. Now I want to do vacations. Now I need to make a certain amount of money. And so it kind of got in the way of ministry. Then there was just one day where I was having a conversation with someone, and they just said something that just kind of triggered something in my mind. And it was like, I'm not going to die with regret. I'm not going to look back on my life and say, man, why didn't you just try it?
Right.
And so it was at that point I talked to my wife, and I'm like, okay, I'm leaving my job within 6 months. We're going to just make it happen. If I got to go get a part-time job doing something, we're going to move in this direction. And then God just made all the connections, and it just happened. And it was just crazy, So,
man, it's amazing how many stories start like that, where it's like basically, I didn't know where I was going. I know I had to go here.
Uh-huh.
I had to do something. And then I did it. And it was all of a sudden like doors opened and things happened. And that's awesome. I love hearing stories like that.
Yep.
All right. So we have to talk about, I feel like, where we are as, I don't say a world, right? Because I don't know what's going on in, France, right?
Right.
But I know what's going on ish around us.
Right.
Dallas, DFW. And I feel like one of the hardest things, one of the biggest things that changed is the people who have known each other for a long time. But one person's white, one person's black, right? And they've known each other for a long time. I feel like all of a sudden right now, the ability to sit down and talk changed.
Yep.
The ability to have a conversation changed. And so I guess the question is, why? Do you think that's a good thing, a bad thing? Like, where do you think we are? And, just kind of where are you at on kind of what's going on as far as like those relationships? I know there's a ton of issues and other things, but kind of just the ability to interact with each other.
I think change just in general is hard. I think there were some things that needed to change. I think there are some things that don't necessarily need to change. I think we're moving at such a quick pace that it's just overwhelming, just in general. Literally, I find myself, looking at people who I've always been friends with and thinking to myself, do I have to be around white people? I don't hate white people, but it's just so hard. So many things are going through your head. Mm-hmm. It's like, how do you process all this at the speed that we're having to process it? And so I think the thing that I've decided to do is just slow the conversation down. Right. Like what we're doing here.
Right.
Like everything doesn't have to be about race for us to talk about race. Like we're talking about race right now because we're able to have a dialogue. And yes, you're white, and yes, I'm black, but that's not the main focus of this moment. Right. And so the more we get comfortable with communicating and having relationships with people that aren't like us, I think it just kind of slows the conversation down and makes it that much easier. And I think just right now in the world, we're just moving really fast, and I think everybody's just trying to hold on.
Right.
And that's hard.
Yeah. From my perspective, it feels like their battle lines have been drawn.
Yep.
But they've been drawn for people, not by people. Like I've not seen, you have not drawn you have not drawn a battle line of between like this conversation, right? But people have created kind of battle lines between a black man and a white man, right? They have been created by people outside of this conversation.
Right.
And then people inside the conversation go, wait a minute, is that where we are?
Right.
You know, because you may not have said something, or I may not have said something like, hey, this is where I'm at. This is the battle line I'm drawing.
Right.
But it's like it influences the conversation. And like that's something that I know for me has always been tricky when somebody creates a battle line that I'm supposed to like just agree with.
Right.
Right. When they're like, well, guess what? You know, this is what all Christians have to do this, or all, you know, whatever, all young men have to believe this. Right. And I'm like, well, but if I don't, where am I?
Right.
You know? So is that something that you've seen, experience? Like is that something that, is it just me, or is that kind of out there?
No, I think the world, and I'm speaking from a Christian perspective, there are lines being drawn and you have to choose.
Right.
Yeah, it's just that simple. If you choose the wrong, as a black person, if I choose the wrong side, I will get attacked by either side. And so that's just a hard place to be in. And for myself, I've just decided that I choose the side of truth. And at moments you may look at me and think, oh, he's pro-black. And at another moment you may look at me and someone may say, oh, he's a sellout. Like, but at the end of the day, I'm pro-truth. It's that simple. And if someone doesn't like what I have to say, I can't do anything about that. You know, like for me as a Christian, the Word of God is my standard, and that's how I have to live my life. Those are the only lines that I'm really concerned about. It may hurt me that you may look at me and think this, or you may look at me and think that, but ultimately I have to grow to a place where what I'm really concerned about is that is it a reflection of God's Word? And that's a hard thing. You know, you're gonna offend people, but God's Word sometimes is offensive, and it is what it is.
Well, that actually points us right to kind of the next question that I had, which is this idea of purpose.
Okay.
Right. Where do you find your purpose?
Where do I find my purpose? I tend to find my purpose in doing hard stuff. I find my purpose in when I feel like God is wanting me to do something. Usually it's the hard things. It's the thing that I don't want to do. But I find the most fulfillment in those moments. For example, just talking about the whole race thing, Faith Bible Church is a predominantly white church. And it would be so easy for me to say, this is just too hard. Like has nothing to do with me not liking white people or anything. It's just hard. But when I say yes to something that I believe God has called me to do, it fulfills me, right? And so at the end of the day, my purpose is, hey, just obey what I know God has called me to do, which is being one with my brothers and sisters in Christ. It's being still, staying planted where He's put me. It's obedience. It's all those things. So for me, producing fruit in like tough places, like to me, like to live a life and I don't ever produce any fruit from it is just really a very scary thought. If I'm praying about things and I don't see fruit, I'm concerned. I want to know why. And so for me, it's like I want to see God's fruit produced from my life. It's kind of where I find fulfillment and purpose, if that makes sense.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't feel like we're having a conversation about purpose in general, just people in general, right? It's like kind of, and I feel like that's lost. Just even talking about like where do you find your purpose? You know, and I think it matters. I think it matters a lot because it gives you a compass, you know, to kind of steer by. So along those same lines, I know you told the story just kind of about Faith Bible as a whole, and it could be Faith Bible or anywhere else.
Right.
Where do you think was one of the hardest hardest lines you had to stand for? What are the hardest things you had to choose to stand for in the face of whatever opposition there might have been either way? Is there like a specific example that you kind of go back to personally?
Yeah, probably one of the hardest times in my life was growing up in high school. I was in a predominantly white Christian school. We were pretty good in sports. We had a lot of athletes transfer from some of the public schools. They started coming to our school. Many were African American, so our school became diverse really fast. And so I was a person who grew up with mostly white friends. So I know that was a hard time for me. Like, who am I going to hold on to my white friends? Am I going to become someone else? Am I going to change? That was a hard time because I remember moments where I was called this or called that, and it just really it was very challenging for me. But I felt like during that time I tried to hold true to who I was as a person, which was, hey man, these are my friends here, these are my friends over here, and that kind of has continued through life. Is that am I willing to be Mark? Like, that's probably my hardest thing is, am I going to be the Mark that God created me to be? And for me, that's taking a stand every time I do that, whether I'm at Faith Bible Church preaching a message. Do I do it like Mark would do it, or do I do it like the environment that I'm in would want me to do it? Like, that's kind of a common thread for me, is like, am I brave enough to take a stand and be Mark? Whether you're talking about race, whether you're talking about preaching, whatever it is, am I brave enough to be who God has called me to be? So I think growing up as a kid, and even sometimes now, it's just, hey, you're in a predominantly white church. Should you act a certain way? Should you preach a certain way? Should you talk a certain way? Like, all that stuff kind of comes into play. And it's like, are you going to just be who God has created you to be? And so it's something I kind of struggle with, I have struggled with my whole life,
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. I obviously have not had the same life experience that you've had, but I found myself in different situations where you go, wait a minute, like, am I that person that I thought I was here? Or am I the person that this situation wants me to be?
Right.
And it's a really kind of, I don't know, it's a humbling moment, to figure out like, what do you believe? Who are you? And you have to kind of answer that question. I think that's probably the most important question anybody can answer, is this idea of like, who are you?
Right.
Where is your identity found? I guess here's the questions that, here's one of the questions that I think for me has maybe the biggest difference in experience that I've seen with different people, and that is police, right? Interactions with police. Growing up, I had a lot of interactions with police, but I wanted to ask you, like, what is your memory of that? What is your kind of, what has that been for you? What is that, what does that mean?
Yeah, so I was a fast driver, had a heavy foot, so I would get a lot of tickets, which was understandable. So the car that I had as a teenager was kind of a hand me down from my older sister, and she had a boyfriend who had a warrant, right? So I would get pulled over all the time, and they would want to know if I was him. Which, okay, that's understandable. Except, why did you run my license plate in the first place?
Right.
So that was always a struggle for me, is, okay, you pulled me over, you want to know if I'm this person, but why did you run my plates? And so I remember one time this guy pulled me over, and he says, hey, I was just doing a routine license plate check-in. I'm looking for this person. Are you this person? So, and then even when I would get pulled over, I can think of multiple times where they would ask me, can they search my car? I never had anything to hide, so I'd let them search my car. But I remember one time I was at school, and we had a police officer come and talk to our class. And I asked the police officer, I said, what is a routine license plate check? And he told me, this is from my recollection, he said, there is no routine license plate check. Like, police officers don't just randomly start checking license plates.
Right.
So then I'm like, so why do I keep getting pulled over? I never had like a negative, yelling, screaming match with a police officer because I just wasn't raised that way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to follow your instructions. I'm going to be respectful, and I'm going to go home. And I'm not going to be worrying about all this other stuff. This is the way I was raised. But at the end of the day, I do, as a black person, when I see a police officer, I get nervous. Or I think, I look in my rearview mirror and say, are they going to pull me over? I just naturally do it. People look at that stuff differently, but I just naturally do it because I've been pulled over so many times. Sometimes it was my fault. Sometimes it was just whatever.
Right.
And so, do I fear police officers? No, I don't fear the police at all. Do I have this thought process that goes through my head when I see police officers? Sometimes I do. Do I think all police officers are bad? No. Do I think most police officers are bad? No. I think there's bad apples in every bunch, So when I raise my children, I was talking about this with my wife. When I raise my son, if I just tell him, hey, you need to be careful when you get pulled over, make sure you do this, make sure you do that, then he's going to be nervous every time he sees a police officer. That's not what I want him to do. So I'm gonna reinforce the positive as well as this other aspect of it. Like he'll know both sides because I don't want him bringing fear into a moment because now he's afraid and maybe this police officer is nervous for some reason because of experiences he may have had, and so it's just a tough thing in general. I think we have to acknowledge that. Police officers, they deal with things on an everyday basis that I've never experienced. So I don't know what they go through. I know they have a responsibility that comes along with the job, but we just we have to give each other some grace with this conversation.
Right. Well, and honestly, to me, we had a lot of interaction with police growing up, and partially it was because of some racist neighbors. All right. Partially it was because of some mean old people who didn't like us playing in the street. So we had the police called on us. 10 kids in our family were always out playing in the street. It was a cul-de-sac, and we had the police called on us multiple times for playing in the street.
Right.
The police would show up, okay, whatever, not a big deal. Then they would leave. But then we had a couple times where the police were called, where the person calling made a reference that there was some kind of gang activity, right? And there were probably 12 to 14 kids playing in the street. Mm-hmm. But some of those kids were black. And we realized oh, hey, there's like a racist neighbor here who's calling the police because of that.
Right.
Which is obviously just wrong, right? But I think growing up, I saw some of that, and you realize, you just thought why? Why would you do that, right? But it didn't really strike me. I don't understand, right? That no, that's just reality that has impacted so many people's lives.
Right.
That you have a different relationship or different perspective of the police because of a variety of different reasons, but all of them are incredibly legitimate. And just because I might not have experienced them doesn't mean they're not real.
Right.
And in fact, the idea that because I didn't experience it, I should assume that it's not real is a dangerous and it's a wrong mindset to even take in that situation.
Right.
And that's something I don't think people really, on either side, I don't think people are really just looking to go, hey, you have experienced something that is valid. And even if I don't understand it, I need to sit down and I need to understand it.
Right.
Because what your life experience is, that should educate how I view the world. Mm-hmm. If my heart and my goal is that people don't have to live in fear or worry about certain things that I'm not worried about.
Right.
You
make a good point about there's fears involved. Those fears come from a place. Mm-hmm. So on the outlying areas, you have people who just hate each other. Mm-hmm. I hate you because of your skin color. Okay. But if you kind of look at a lot of the other times where you have this issue, there's fear because of perception. Whether your perception is valid or not, you have a perception of a group. And so you're responding to that perception. And so the only way to really change that is we have to change our perception of each other. And the only way you do that is conversation, being around people that aren't like you, asking tough questions, analyzing your own heart and how you think. I think when we start changing how we see each other, then when a white person is on the elevator with me, they don't clutch their purse because they know people who are black and
right.
their perception is not valid. The same thing with me. If I get pulled over, as just a police officer doing his job, I don't have to, be nervous all of a sudden that I may get shot or something negative is going to happen or he's going to treat me this way or that way. So we have to change our perception of each other. Media controls how we see each other a lot. And so we have to unplug from the narrative that the world is giving us. And I choose to paint my own perception of who you are as a person that has to get past the outer, your outer appearance or whatever. And I know this is all rosy.
Right.
We just got to change our perception of each other. But I think at a ground roots level, this is how it happens. It's organic. I can't force you to like me. I can't it has to happen one-on-one, one person at a time, one family at a time, one community at a time. And then you'll look 10 years down the road and you'll see change.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, but we're all trapped inside, right? Most of the people are stuck. They're not going out nearly as much, not interacting with nearly as many people. Something that's really impacted the way I view other people, whether it's a black person or just somebody I don't know, like just other people I don't know, right? Anytime there's kind of this unknown, right, mm-hmm. of another person, I think a lot of times when we do that, we immediately apply a generalization to that group, right? Or that person. I'm just going to apply it based on whatever. Guy has tattoos. I'm going to assume some stuff, probably completely wrong, but that's what's going to happen,
right.
Or at least that's what has happened.
Right.
And one of the things that I've tried to do with myself is realize that most people, even if you completely disagree with me, mm-hmm. you still have the same hopes, dreams, aspirations, goals in life, the same desires that I do. Mm-hmm. You're more than likely acting out of what you believe is right. You're acting based out of a desire for love, respect, understanding, a desire to be heard, and hopefully to hear. Like, that's where people are coming from mostly.
Right.
That is where it is. Whether you disagree on how to get there, if I can give you the benefit of the doubt that whatever you believe it because of an earnest belief, because you want what you believe to be good.
Right.
And if we can start there, then I'm not angry at you for disagreeing with me.
Right.
I'm wondering how you got to where you're at because I'm approaching it the same way. And, I want to know where you're coming from. I want to understand why you believe what you believe. And if it's different than mine, I want to know because it's coming from kind of a similar place as humans.
Right.
And I think that's a valuable place to start, but you have to sort of pull away from this kind of group think mentality.
Right.
That is really devastating for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're going to fix the world, you've got 2 minutes to do it. How are you fixing everything? It's a loaded question, but
Man, this is going to sound corny and cheesy, but you fix the world with Jesus. And I just mean, when I read about Jesus, you just see something. He just was different. That he had something for everybody. And so for me, it's like discovering what he had. Like, I want that. So that when I go into if I'm going to a room and it's full of KKK people who are part of KKK, I hope I can. I just believe like God can put me in hard situations and he's just going to give me something to say that's going to impact it. I mean, and so for me, like Christianity or Christ in general, he really is like the key in a relationship with him, not religion, not your denomination. It's like a real authentic relationship with Jesus. To me, that's more than words, more than when you worship, more than the songs you sing. It's like something that's real that says, man, I'm going to lay down my life for you to show you love. Like if I can get to that place, then I think I can impact at least one heart, if not 2 or 3. And maybe this thing multiplies and we change a lot lot more than what we ever thought we could do. So for me, man, it really is Jesus. Like it's that simple. It's that simple as that complex, you know.
Right. If only it's that easy and that difficult.
Yep.
Well, there you go. He just fixed the world's problems very succinctly, and I mean, I think you're right. Obviously, there's a lot involved, and it's complicated. But there you go. I guess that's it for the first ever of these conversations. Same blood. Thank you, Marc, for sitting down.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it was fun. It didn't feel like we were talking that long, but I know it's been a little bit. So
I enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please feel free to comment, leave a comment, or share this video, share the conversation. If you have something to add to it, please. But understand that the heart of this is to have conversations, to not view each other through this idea of where we're supposed to disagree, where we're supposed to fight, but through the lens of people, interacting with people who want to find common ground, who want to be together, who want to live together in a place that we all want to be. So thanks for watching, and see you on the next one.